bits of housekeeping. Other bits of housekeeping are that we're going to use Trello for this session. I was saying earlier to the group of speakers and things that we've just been really open with all of the planning for this session, kind of thinking that you guys are all friendly, and so we've added the session brief to, I think, even the Eventbrite, and also to the website and things like that. So in that document is a whole bunch of information about who the speakers are, and also some links to Trello. So I am no Trello expert myself, but I do think it's got potential for the session for kind of live note taking and then ongoing. So if you would like to become a member of that Trello and contribute to it, you can do that by clicking a link. I will add that link to the actually, I have a list of links for you. There we go. So this is the contribute link. If you want to take part in that Trello, where's my chat? Chat. Okay. Everybody in the meeting. So that's the link for being a contributor. And if you just want to see what's going on, but you don't want to sign up, I totally understand. And this is the view link. Oops, I may have stuffed that up slightly, but yeah, those are the two links there. Other housekeeping is, we thought we were going to do this session in an hour and a half, and then we decided that we probably needed slightly longer. So it's going to be somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours long. If you need to disappear, I totally understand. We're recording it, so you can watch it later if you need to. Please keep yourself on mute, but please don't be afraid to use the chat to ask questions and make comments. Okay, I think that's all. So now I need to do the thing, which is sharing my screen. This one, share. And if I press present, are you guys seeing? Oh, actually, you know what? I need to do something else first. I need to bring this over here. And then I need to go present. Okay, are you guys seeing that like you should? I get some thumbs up? No.
No, we were, and then we weren't.
Okay.
Yeah, we were.
Now?
We're seeing the thanks, the last slide.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Man, take all of those over there. And it really does not need to be the last slide, right? It needs to be all the way back to the front. So we're here today to talk about this model that the Zero Waste Network, like we've been doing some thinking and we've come up with a thing. And it's awesome that so many of you are here, but it's also slightly daunting because this is very much just this is a draft document. And this is us doing some thinking, and the idea of the session is really to get everybody's thoughts on it and try and improve it, and really to know whether it's useful or not. I personally have found it really, really useful for understanding the different aspects of the work that happens across the network. And we're going to hear from a bunch of, I guess, representatives of different parts of different organizations and the Zero Waste Network itself, who are going to kind of illustrate these intervention points. So this is the key, oops, that link is the key thing. And now what I need to do is actually stop my sharing for this one and actually show you the table for a second. So we sent through the link, and you guys should all, I actually will just chuck it back in the chat in case you haven't seen it. That's that link, copy. So going into, that's the table link there. Highly recommend you have a look at it sometime. Doesn't need to be right now, because I'm going to show it to you as well. And sharing my screen again, I want to share that one. What I actually want to share is this one. No, this one. So can you guys all see the table there? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to tell you about the table is there's some instructions for you to read. And I really just want to give you a super quick overview of the table. So we've got 5 intervention points at the moment. They're kind of running from actions to behaviours to cultural identity, but they don't necessarily need to go in that order. So we haven't numbered them. There's just 5 different boxes. And so in the table, we've got a super brief definition. That's this, what is it? That's just a very brief definition. But in the second part, what does it look like? It really tries to give a bit more of a description of what we're talking about. Then the third row is who does it, and so that's really about who's involved, or what our take on who is involved at actually kind of leading and doing things at that intervention point. Now, the last 2 rows are really the crux of what we want to look at in the workshop session. So that's what's missing or what needs to happen next. And I think, that could be taken at the level of, Aotearoa. But, definitely full disclosure here, I am quite biased about the network, and I am really interested in what you think that we should be doing collaboratively or collectively, but also what the Zero Waste Network team, so me and Izzy and Ali and Sue and the rest of us, should be focused on. So that's really what I'm hoping the workshop session will try and dig out. And then secondly, and as importantly, I mentioned before that we've been really looking at how we can embed Te Tiriti into our work. And so we want to ask that as a separate question and have that as a separate kind of stream here of thinking. So how might we authentically engage with Te Ao Māori and Mātauranga Māori and Te Tiriti o Waitangi and actually be allies in that space? So that is the table, and what we're going to do is have speakers from each of them, well, really just representing them, but I'll go back to my other presentation now. So share screen. Okay. Can you guys see the actions and behaviours? Yeah. So we're very lucky to have Izzy on the team, and she's an amazing graphic designer. So she has very kindly tried to illustrate some of the kind of key aspects of these 5 different intervention points. Man, I need to just like, there's too many screens going on. Okay. So when we come to actions and behaviours, it's really, I think, what we mostly think about in terms of zero waste work. It's stuff that I do when I choose to, not buy something, or buy something that I know is recyclable. And when I go down to my local resource recovery park and actually recycle it, it's my actions, and it's something very kind of concrete that I know I can do, but also businesses can do. Businesses are making choices all the time to, choose a more sustainable, packaging choice. And so there's some really kind of concrete things that businesses are doing. It's also about like the work that, for instance, waste teams all around the country within councils are doing to support their communities to take actions. So I think the point about that one is it's really about It's really the things that we think of as zero waste. The next bit is infrastructure and services. So that's the physical zero waste facilities that people need every day to enable zero waste living. And it's the services that make those things tick. So this is also very concrete. I think some things that are missing in this space is that we don't necessarily have a coordinated approach. We have some really good examples, but it would be amazing if those really good examples were also replicated all around the country and it was a coordinated approach. So then we come to resources and knowledge. And for me, this was the hardest one for me to get my head around. I think this is where it becomes kind of more conceptual and abstract. Like I said, actions, behaviors, and definitely infrastructure. Those are really concrete things. But the knowledge and resources flows is how I found it useful to think about it. Was from here on, in terms of the intervention points, it's really about what we need in order to make those concrete things a reality. So we need to pay for those things somehow, and we need to have the knowledge about how to set these things up and how to run them. The next point is political systems, structures, and leadership. This is definitely about the organisations and groups that get to make decisions about how waste and resource recovery happens. And in a democracy, I think it's really important to point out that it's about the power that we're actually giving those groups. So I think it's very easy to think about this intervention point as mostly about the government, and that's represented by the beehive there. But so also the Ministry for the Environment, local government who have the responsibility for waste in this country. But I think it's probably useful to remember that the Zero Waste Network itself is in fact an example of a decision of a group of people who decided that they wanted to do something differently on zero waste. And so it's actually about organisations and ways of working and ways of organising and the future, the kind of structures that we think are going to create the future that we want. I think, just going back to the political system, structures and leadership, one of the really big things that is missing is that Te Tiriti is not, I think, barely mentioned in our current waste legislation. And there is an opportunity at the moment. It is being reviewed. And there's lots of the waste hierarchy is also not particularly present in the waste legislation. So at the moment, there's a huge opportunity for us to really be looking at some of that legislation. And we've had such good examples over the last couple of years of working together as a network to say some really, really important things to government in their consultation processes. So I think that's another one just to flag that I think we should be working on it in the next kind of coming up in the next couple of months. And last but not least is cultural identity, values and mindset. To me, this is a crucial one. I think that's because of its potential to influence all of the others. It's also the hardest one to pin down and to build from scratch. But I think that the good news is that there's actually heaps of things that are already in place that we can build upon to really, I think there are heaps of important values within our society that we'll be able to kind of build from rather than building from scratch. So what I want to do now is just quickly go through a couple of ways that Izzy has helped us visualize the concept. The first one is the idea of a lever. So a lever in kind of physics is a way of moving something heavy a little bit more easily. And I think I just want to point out here that there's a reference down the bottom. So this idea of a lever is building on the literature that exists around leverage point and systems change. And it's really that idea that if you've got something heavy to lift or you've got something hard to move, if you stick something under it and you push down, you can kind of move it along. So we know what we want to achieve, and that's a shift from an extractive system to a regenerative system. And so we're presenting these kind of intervention points as parts along the lever. And what we're saying in this diagram is that some are going to be better at than others. I have had a critique of this, which is very, very useful when you know a lot about physics, because what this doesn't do a good job of is suggest that actually the hardest things, which is probably cultural identity, values, and mindset, and also those kind of slow moving political systems, actually on a lever, like that would be the easiest thing, and that's actually not what we're saying. So it's definitely not a perfect diagram, but it is a really, really useful way of thinking that these are different points, but all working to the same effect. And then kind of building on that is the last one, which is visualizing the 5 intervention points as interlocking parts. And that's really an attempt to try and illustrate the connections between them. Because I think it's really important to remember that we're talking about a conceptual model here, and real life often doesn't fit into boxes. Some things definitely fit across more than one intervention point, and like these categories are in some ways totally artificial, but it doesn't mean that they're not useful in terms of helping us understand the work that we're currently doing, and particularly for planning how we're going to approach future work. So that is my whistle stop tour. And now we get to the more important part of the session, which is hearing from people who are actually doing stuff on the ground. So first up, we have Nadine Tupp from Me Family Services. Nadine is currently one of the waste generation facilitators in the Talking Rubbish team at Me Family Services, which is based in Mangere in Tamaki Makaurau. They have a tertiary background in environmental science, law, and human rights, and bring that interdisciplinary and socio-ecological lens to their work, focusing on empowering communities in whānau to make the changes they can when they can. Nadine was active in youth, environmental, and marine networks around Tamaki, which led them down the environmental sciences pathway initially at university before they reconnected again with a love of working on the ground at the Harakeke roots, advocating for change. They're Pākehā and from Wellsford in rural North Auckland, but now live in Mangere. So Nadine, welcome. I'm going to pin you, even though you don't have a slideshow.
Kia ora, apologies all, I didn't realise that a slideshow was an option, so you'll have to put up with my face. Ngā mihi nui kia koe for that introduction, daughter. Oh, now I see myself on that screen. But tuatahi, ko orua whoro te awa, ko kaipara te moana, ko kikitangi o te maunga, no whakapira o hou, kei mangere tuku kāinga anai, ko Me Family Services, me Talking Rubbish a hou e mahi ana, me ko Pākehā a hou, ko Nadine tōku ingoa. So kia ora, my name is Nadine, and like Dora said, I work with the Talking Rubbish team down in Mangere East, working across Mangere o Tahu, and I'm super excited to share a little bit about what we do and kind of our focus on shifting behaviour. So Talking Rubbish is a team within Me Family Services. We're based in Mangere East, and that's in southern Tamaki Makaurau. We're a team of 4, but in addition to that, we also have a heap of regular time traders. So those are people that volunteer their time for us. They breathe their life into our mahi and upskill as they do so, plus a lot of community connections. And we also have 2 other rōpū within Me Family Services, which includes an early childhood education centre and also a social work team with Swissies or social workers in schools right across our local board area, as well as a community social work team as well. So essentially, we're a team with a heap of tendrils that are embedded in the community in lots of different ways. So in Talking Rubbish within that, we do talk a lot of rubbish, and my role is one of the ones that primarily does that in the waste regeneration space. But we've grown over the last 6 years to include a lot of other kaupapa as well. So I joined the team about a year ago, took on that waste role I will just preface that this is actually my last week for this amazing organisation. So this is one of the last amazing things I'll get to do. But we also have Koia Tena Kore. So he assists with the waste role, but he spends most of his time in our community marakai called Te Puna Oranga. Then we have Georgina Kelly Natoko, who I saw on this call as well. So she's our resource recovery therapist, and along with some of those time traders will help us run our resource recovery room, while Justine Skilling, also on the call, wrangles us as our team manager, and she also works on a couple of multi-year projects and with lots of community partners as well. So things like Innovating Streets with Waka Kotahi and Auckland Council, or Urban Ngāhere project. And then one of those multi-year projects is connecting stakeholders with the 4 awa of Mangere, so the Ororangi, the Pukake, the Tiararasa and the Harinea awa. And those are stakeholders from iwi hapu and mana whenua, local volunteer groups, different parts of council, residents, environmental scientists, and all just looking for strategic visioning and action to try to build this collective behaviour change, I guess, really. So again, there are many branches to that mahi, but all of the branches are pointing in the same direction, which is where our theory of change is heading and where we think it kind of aligns with that first step of the theory of change presented here. So we have the overarching goal of helping create a regenerative community in Mangere o Tahuhu, which underpins a thriving community, thriving for the people and culture, water, plants, air, and all of the other living and non-human elements of that place as well. So in short, we're about caring for papa tōnuku as well as caring for people and encourage connections across both of that realms. Like Donna mentioned, I'm a socioecologist by training, so I see our team working across the mirror realms of social and environmental systems, and we explicitly see them as interconnected to be kind of challenged concurrently. So we encourage individual and collective change, especially through our community, and building focused and empowering communities across our role. I didn't say that quite right, but I think you know what I mean. So with my waste hat on, that often means making people aware of the impactful daily changes they can make. And often that is starting at maybe what lots of us would consider the beginning. So maybe getting their recycling right, using less plastic, and the kind of accessible and meaningful ways that reusable items could be incorporated into their whānau or whare. And we encourage a world where all things used in Mangere o Tahu are made locally and reused or find their second, third, fourth or fifth life here locally as well, and that kind of truly regenerative and circular economies. We want to keep waste away from landfills and help facilitate that through our resource recovery room. So in the last 3 years, we've diverted about 25 tonnes of waste from landfill, as well as actually resourcing numerous whānau by providing a safe space for whānau to come in and share their stories and access items or other support as well. Shout out to Georgina for that awesome mahi. And we want to share our knowledge in accessible and easy ways, like with Koia or the other time traders in the marakai, gifted the name Te Puna Oranga or the Spring of Health by Pania Newton. We want to show whānau how easy it can be for them to create mara at home, to compost, create worm farms, bokashi, trench waste, and share about the ways that might actually work and be meaningful for them. Our whole theory of change is based on that empowerment lens of meeting people where they are and acknowledging that not all those in our community can make huge changes all at once, but collectively we can make little changes in the ways that we can and when we can. And by focusing what we can do rather than what we can't, that empowerment is kind of a cornerstone of what we do. It's a very behaviour-oriented kind of change, sharing what people can do or trying to highlight where some behaviours could be changed or stopped for better outcomes for people and for papa tōnuku and our community. And that's often coming from a place of connection, trying to share stories about environment, get people out experiencing it, where knowledge is power, but communicating that knowledge in ways that are relevant and meaningful for them are even more powerful. And that's how we start to nudge behaviour in the right direction. We acknowledge kind of the intersectionality of the mahi that we're doing and the community with the very hyper-local focus we have, being only the Mangere o Tahu local board area, like I said earlier, and therefore being okay with just kind of nudging in the right direction. And where sweeping changes all at once might not be accessible for everyone, but that's a big part of our mahi of why these are kind of strength-based to uplift and empower in the ways that are meaningful and relevant when we can. We tap into a little bit of cultural knowledge here as well, just acknowledging that people are experts in their own life and bring mechanisms and ways of change that are different from our own knowledge in the team, but they're equally valid to lead to change in this way as well. And finally, just another key aspect of the mahi is grounding what we do in the place of mangere. So waste led into streams, which led into ngāhere, and what we do kind of encourages people to love where they're from, and that's where our action and behaviour kind of springs from. And we see the beauty and potential in the place. We started primarily doing a lot of waste works and education, and we still do that, and a lot of that mahi in my role, but we've then developed our community marakai, our resource room. We're involved in other projects, and now as a connector in the community for anything kind of sustainability in our local board space as well. So it's about being visible in the community, creating community around this kaupapa, where it moves from bin monitoring to training up local bin monitors for the events, to where community kind of collectively owns this, and it's something that we inherently do. And so now the mahi has grown to be much wider than just us, and we're moving further down our own theory of change with local waste champions, partnerships, new ideas and directions coming to us from the community, so truly being led by the harakeke roots. But that's kind of where our change is coming from, and where our action and behaviour aspect of that is coming from, and hopefully that's giving you kind of some food for thought. Ngā nui, that is me.
Awesome. Thank you, Nadine. And so when we go into the workshops, Nadine and Justine from Me Family Services will be in the action and behaviours room. Okay, so next we have Nada Piontek, and I have a bio here. So Nada is the co-founder and managing director of Again Again. I'm just going to remove your spotlight, Nadine. Okay, Nada Piontek from Again Again. Nada is the co-founder and managing director of Again Again, a container management system for takeaways without the throwaways. Launched in 2018, initially with only coffee cups, Again Again has forged a path for the share economy to challenge the wasteful and unsustainable practices involving single-use packaging in the hospitality industry. After a successful capital raise in late 2020, Again Again is scheduled to bring a technology-based solution to market by late 2021. This will empower vendors to loan a range of reusable serviceware to customers, dramatically increasing the potential of the impact. It's awesome. Nada is a seasoned entrepreneur who brings business savvy to impact and values-led enterprises. With over 22 years of experience in social entrepreneurship, Nada focuses on sustainability and achieving results on a triple bottom line. It is her and Again Again's vision that reusables are normal for takeaways everywhere. Welcome, Nada.
Thanks, Roger. Kia te mihi, kia koe. Tēnā koutou katoa ki te whanui parakore. He pai te kiti ia koutou katoa I konei. Ko Nada Piontek tōkou ingoa, ko hotu whaiwhakahaere o Again Again. So as daughter has just shared with you, I am the managing director of Again Again, and for the last couple of years, Again Again has had a system in market using stainless steel cups and silicone lids that has provided an alternative to single-use packaging explicitly and specifically for the coffee cup industry. I've been asked today to speak in the section, I guess, that pertains to infrastructure and services, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be able to share with you not just where we have come from with the coffee cups, but that we are really on the brink of launching an extension to our program that will cover a much wider range of containers and a new technology platform that will support the management of those containers so that it can be commercially viable for vendors. Before I launch into that, daughter, congratulations on the framework you've put together. I think it's a really succinct way of describing the work that we're all doing, really. As I was trying to fit Again Again into your framework, though, it became very obvious to me, and I think it probably is to everybody, that you can't really take one section without all the other sections. And so we absolutely work in that infrastructure and services corner, but actually we couldn't do it without having the interaction with all the other parts of it. And actually what we do is mostly in one place, but then also has our own tendrils out to the different places. So I, on one hand, speaking in that sector gives us an opportunity to share the quite tangible things that we're developing and bringing to market. But I want to acknowledge that we can't do this alone, and we can't do this without being within the greater framework. So what I'd like to share with you today actually is some of the research work in that and what we've distilled in terms of what makes a reuse system work. And then I'll introduce you to how we have applied that into our own system. So I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. Can you see my presentation? Yeah.
Yes, but for me it's quite small. You're quite big.
Oh,
I wonder if is that the same for other people?
You can
Just need to adjust your view, daughter.
Ah, okay. Thanks, guys.
okay. I won't monkey around with what I've done then. Okay, so let me just collapse this so that I'm not seeing all of you at the same time. So reuse systems really have three components that need to be addressed in order to make it work. The first is the containers themselves. The second is how we manage them, and the third is how to sanitize them. So all of those components need to be brought together to make a system work. And I think that there has been varying degrees of focus on one or other of those areas. And in the absence of the one not being focused on, actually the system really struggles. So the first area is the containers. Many of the systems, like Again around the world, have chosen a container and then essentially use that one container or possibly two containers as being the gold standard that can be shared amongst all vendors. What our experience has shown is that really isn't the case, that the range of food and drinks that vendors are serving really require the range of packaging that you see in single-use packaging. And so by forcing a container onto a vendor, you actually reduce the value of the whole system to parts of the industry. So where previously we've been working with just the one container in the coffee industry, we'll be moving to a range of containers. And within our public shared system, we will have some specific containers that are interoperable, but we have also created the opportunity for vendors to bring their own containers in that best suit the food and drink that they're already selling. The next question, how do you manage those containers? So we're going to go through three different services. We currently use a cash deposit system. Use of technology is definitely an option, and for a wider range of more expensive containers is a necessity. But there is also the very tried and tested method of simply trusting people, and in a community sense that has got value too. So we're going to dig into that. The third part of it is washing and sanitisation. In the hospitality industry, a large number of the vendors that we work with do have those facilities in place, but actually at scale, those two come under some pressure. What we have done with Again is that we've identified that we can help in these two areas, the containers and the management of it, but actually we are choosing not to try and work in the wash and sanitisation area. I wanted to acknowledge it though, because really it's society's great problem that we currently have very little infrastructure for, and it has to be there in order to make any of it work. And so the work that we're doing in the containers and the wash in the management side of things, I believe it's very valuable, but it won't reach its true potential until that third component with the washing is also resolved. So the fleet has to be fit for purpose, it has to be economical, and with the increasing existence of these shared systems like Again, then if it's interoperable, then it creates more value both to the end user and to the vendor. Fit for purpose means a lot of things, and it means different things to different people. So we currently, like I said, have a single walled stainless steel with a paper sleeve and a silicone lid. You can see that just poking out in the back there. We really support the choices that we've made about that, but I think it's a really valid critique that the paper sleeve potentially is a waste stream in and of itself. It's a better waste stream than a single-use cup because it doesn't have that plastic lining, but nonetheless it is still resources that have a higher chance of being recycled, but still some of that will still end up in the landfill. But there are really values in the material choices that we've made as well. And the key one is the commercial the commercial viability of it. We're able to loan out those cups and not lose money essentially at scale for $3. And so that is a value that is important in a commercial realm and really can only be achieved otherwise with a plastic cup. And so we were faced with looking at choosing what we did choose versus plastic, and we continue to hold some concerns about the toxicity of plastic and don't see that that is a material that we would want to move to. Nonetheless, it's important to recognise that plastic does have its place, and it's not the plastic itself, it's how it's being used that's the problem. Moving forward, all of our containers will be stainless steel still, and many of them will be double walled, so they will be insulated. The interoperability, of course, is really important, and because we're building this as a national system and as the technology comes in, we'll be able to then also interact and hold the end user responsible within that loan equation, then we can be supporting greater value containers. And this is the system then is built in for us to, because we're able to hold the end user responsible, we're also able to pass that responsibility or the revenue that's generated of that responsibility back to the vendors to support auto replacement of containers that disappear. It won't work for everyone though. I think it's really important in a commercial sense to recognise that branded containers are really important, and businesses who are first and foremost concerned with the money they're making and the profit they're taking from their hospitality businesses, then marketing and having your brand in people's hands every time that sale is made is extraordinarily important. And so our platform will be able to support businesses who choose to source their own containers, probably branded within the system. And as I mentioned before, plastics definitely have their place. And in fact, the LCA studies that look at the different types of material in a shared system suggest that plastic is actually the lightest load from an emissions perspective. But of course, it still doesn't deal with the potential, with the fact that they are far more likely to end up in landfill eventually, and then there's a toxicity issue as well. Again, is choosing currently not to support plastic within our own shared system, but we recognise the commercial need for plastic in shared systems for our society as a whole, and so we will be supporting plastics on the platform if they are brought to us. With respect to the management, like I said, we currently work in that deposit and return space and then are moving to a tech-enabled space. The deposit and return is pretty simple. End users or consumers pay $3 to borrow a cup at the point where they purchase their coffee. They take the cup away, do with it what they want. Technically, they have 2 weeks to return it, but of course we can't and don't police that. When the cup comes back to the network, any one of the network partners, not necessarily the cafe that the coffee was initially purchased from, then the $3 is fully refunded back to the customer, and then that cafe will take on the sanitization process such that the cup is then ready to go for the next person, and so it goes round. I think that's a pretty tried and true circular model that we all understand. And the introduction of technology doesn't change that. We still very much have that technology, that circular movement. But what we see is that instead of the $3 deposit being what keeps things true, we now have a technology platform that essentially tracks the transaction, and within the app can ensure that the responsibility is passed to the consumer. We still have that extensive network of cafes that are working with us, and so there is with our own fleet, there will still be that interoperable nature where people can borrow from one cafe and return at another cafe, and of course we'll still have the vendors who will be sanitizing the containers and having them ready for the next person. This is a more detailed diagram of the circular nature of what we're doing, and I won't go into too much detail about this, but I do want to point out that the differences are that at the point of issue in a cash deposit return system, there's that $3 truthing point with the technology that then will go onto the consumer app. By putting it onto an app, we actually can track that 2-week period that we haven't been able to track with the cash system, and if the cup doesn't come back, then the other change that occurs is over here where the container, there is a replacement fee that is charged to the end user, and because the end user is now responsible within that equation, we can replace the container to the vendor at no further charge. And so by acting as that intermediary, again, and the platform that we are bringing to market is able to really keep that circular movement of containers going. So what I'd like to do now is stop sharing my screen and go a little bit off track here, because we haven't actually showed anybody this. We had one test run earlier in the week, but I'd like to show you how it all looks. So customers are going to download the app. They'll need to go through a bit of an induction via the app, and they'll need to put in a $10 balance, which is not money that it's not money that is being spent. It's money that's being held in essentially a bond, so that we can offer the containers at no further cost to them. And if providing those containers come back, they're going to be free for the consumer. But if they don't come back, then we've got some safeguard essentially for that. So once the app is up and running, we have a concept of the shelf. Whenever a consumer borrows a container, then those containers will then sit on the shelf of the end user has borrowed them. So you can see here that I've borrowed half a dozen in the last few days. If I want to borrow another one, then I obviously am in a cafe that is serving the coffee or serving the food that I want to borrow from. I click the plus button, and then I have to scan, and you see here that we're using an NFT technology. So we just simply scan, and it will come up, it will get from that scan tag that we are, you can see here we're now in Mojo Aurora. So it's a cafe that we're working in partnership with in Wellington developing this. And these are the containers that would be available from Mojo. Clearly this is test data because Mojo actually doesn't sell beer, but there's a range of different containers that a cafe might be able to offer. And as a consumer, I might say, great, I'm going to have a regular coffee. I'd like to borrow that. Now, in a traditional sales transaction, you would expect when you buy something to then hand over the cash, and it's an equal and opposite equation. There still needs to be a sense of that when you're passing across the value of the container. So this green screen is essentially a validation that the transaction has taken place, and it's visually verified by the counter staff who say, great, good to go, and you're away. And now when we look, that container is now sitting on my shelf, and it will stay there for a couple of weeks during the free period, the online period, and no further actions will take place. You can see further up here, though, that these containers have been checked out for longer, a bit like a library book, and you can see that the green background is depleting. By the time it gets to the bottom, then you will have gone through your free period, and at that point, there will be consequences. So you may go into extra time and pay a small fee, or if there isn't an extra time period on that container, then we'll go to we'll consider that container lost, and at that point we would charge a replacement fee. The app, of course, also tracks the impact. And so at the top there, you can see that there's some personal impact. You can see your milestones, how many containers that you've borrowed or where you've borrowed them from. And then there's also a collective impact screen that allows you to see what the whole network is doing. So there's I think it's really important, and this feeds into the behavior part of your framework, that we're able to see and be rewarded, if only by cute pictures of animals, of the good work that we're doing. So yeah, that pretty much concludes what it is that we are doing, and excited to show that we'll be bringing in containers for food vendors, and in the very near future integrating our system with online ordering platforms, so that at the point where you're ordering the food, you can also order the containers that you want to put it into. It's been pretty exciting times for us. It's been an enormous project. We've had a team of about 14 working most of the year to bring it to market. And if COVID hadn't hit us again in Auckland a couple of weeks back, we actually would be in testing stage by now. Hopefully it won't be delayed too much, because most of our testing is being done in Wellington. But by the end of this year, we would expect to have this in the market and available across the country to vendors who are keen to jump on board. So Ngā mihi nui, that's pretty much us in a nutshell. I really appreciate the opportunity to show it off. I'm a little bit nervous because it's the first outing that it's had amongst a group of people who genuinely understand what the problems are. And I guess I would end by saying we also really value the engagement that we have in other parts of that network. So while this is very much a commercial solution and focused on businesses, the most success that we have had so far with the coffee cup and the coffee cup industry is in communities where there is the community support. And so that, I think, is a huge opportunity for us to be working with community waste professionals, many of whom are on the call today, and yeah, we look forward to continuing that work as we grow. Ngā mihi nui.
Thanks, Nada. Really, really cool to see that infrastructure is not just that kind of bricks and mortar stuff, and it's exciting, I think, to see how you're adapting to the new challenges. We have had a question for you, which is how far away is your tech from launching, which I do think you addressed, but say it again.
Yeah, so we're actually going into beta testing tomorrow, but with a very tight group. So we've got 25 user testers, beta testers, and one cafe, Luke's saying, with People's Coffee in Wellington. In about 2 or 3 weeks' time, then we'll be going a step further, and we're partnering with Garage Project, who are a craft brewer in Wellington. They currently send out all of their cellar door beer in brown PET. So they have a huge problem, but commercially they need to sell beer. And I'd also preface to say they're really, really committed to their sustainability, but they're actually first and foremost committed to selling beer. And so they have to continue selling in PET because there's simply a brown PET because there simply are no other options. So they're really excited to be partnering with us, and we'll be launching with them in about 3 to 4 weeks' time, COVID notwithstanding. And then we've got 5 weeks of testing. So we're looking probably in November that it will be available for nationwide release.
Awesome. There are more questions for you in the chat, but I am needing to be aware of time. So if you want to have a look and answer some of those questions on the chat, that would be awesome.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nada. Next up, we have a man of many hats, but today Matthew Luxon is representing Localised. He is the founder and business development director of Localised, which is the Zero Waste Network social enterprise for supporting community-led commercial activity. Matthew is also the director of Envision, a zero waste consultancy working across Aotearoa, supporting local and central government departments on resource recovery issues. He lives with his wife, Waveney, on a small and amazing permaculture farm in Matakana in rural North Auckland. Welcome, Matthew.
Morning, Morena. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, ina mana, ina rea, nei rā te mihi. Gosh, it's so freaking cool for the soul to see all your faces, and it's such a bugger that we can't be together in person, but it will certainly be sweeter because of it when we do finally get together again. And I just get so much inspiration and encouragement from all the work you guys all do, and great hearing about it again and again just then as well. So yeah, so thanks, and ngā mihi nui to all of you for joining today. Ngā mihi to you, daughter, and Ellie and Izzy and the Zero Waste Network board for putting this together and making the quick jump to online. So yeah, well done. I've got my stopwatch going, daughter. I'm going to go crack into it so you can make up some time, and because I know there's still more to do. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer in that I absolutely love that lever diagram. I think those 5 intervention points spot on. And when I saw it, it just suddenly all made sense for me. It just, everything clicked, and I understood how what we all do fits together collectively. So over the past few years, I suppose I've become more and more aware, thankfully, of what my happy place is in terms of where I operate and fit in that system. And it's such a relief to know that you don't have to try to be or do everything in the world of zero waste. So and that we're all in it together. My old business partner, Warren Snow, and my life partner, Waveney, both think a lot more globally than I do. And I'm also in awe of people like Trina at Helensville or Trish in Matakana, who think a lot more locally and community than I ever will. So the stuff that really, that I tend to think about when I'm daydreaming or driving or doing both is how can we flourish commercially at a national level? And I think that probably comes from being part of a family of business people, and basically, to put it bluntly, getting pissed off that that a company selling super glue or tennis rackets, can have many more options, influence, and financial security than we can, while we're trying to address inequity and environmental destruction and the creation of a whole global circular economy. So I think that's where this came from and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And there's a bunch of things I want to see in my lifetime in relation to this, mahi, and to my work. And that is that I really want the Zero Waste Network to have enough money and security to have a lasting and effective impact on waste and elimination in Aotearoa. I want our people to have that same swagger that you see when people working for big foreign-owned waste companies have when they walk into a room or into a meeting with council staff, because they know that they've got money in their organisation's pockets. I want us to have that same swagger. I also would love to see a national community-led resource recovery network. And I want that network to be the first choice for a partner for mandatory product stewardship schemes for recovering resources. I'd love to see the community sector having a decent shot at going for big contracts if they want to. And finally, I want to see communities having access to the resources, knowledge, and finance they need to establish or grow community-owned enterprises. So with all that in mind, it's not much to do. And so I've been working away and to this end with, say, Ian, Stuffle, Gary, support from the Zero Waste Network Board, and many of you here. My mahi today is focused on establishing and growing Localised. So as Daughter said, Localised is owned by you guys. It's owned by the Zero Waste Network, 100%. It's a limited liability company. It's accredited as a social enterprise by Kina's social procurement program. And our business model really is to partner with local community-led organisations on joint ventures. So what we do is we contribute seed capital where we need to, we contribute expertise, and then we seek to gain a financial return that is then used to do another joint venture somewhere else in another community. So we're nationally focused, and we're not just restricted to waste enterprises. So then our impact model is that what we're trying to do by doing this is we want to make it easier for community enterprises to get going. We just want to see lots of community-owned businesses, basically, and we want to see the magic that they bring in more communities throughout New Zealand. So that's what, and we want to see that national network develop. So we've got two ventures underway at the moment. So some of you, or many of you, might know of Maharangi Wastebusters, which is soon, as I've decided yesterday, to change its name to Maharangi Zero Waste Limited. So Maharangi Wastebusters has a 3-year contract with Auckland Council to run 2 sites. We handle 20 tonnes of rubbish a week, and we divert another 20 tonnes of material every week from those 2 sites through 23 resource recovery streams. There's about 18 staff. They're all on the living wage, and what else? Yeah, it's great. So it's been going for 2 years now, just over 2 years. And Warkworth and in Wellsford are the 2 sites that are there, and we've got another year of that contract, and God willing, a much longer contract after that. So that's our first venture that Localised has been involved in. We own 50% of that company. The other 50% is owned by a local community trust, which is also confusingly called Maharangi Wastebusters, which is why we're changing the name. And then the second venture is, we're really excited to be able to tell you now, is that we have won the contract to provide warehousing and distribution for Auckland's organic collection. So next July, yes, that's right, Janet. Kyle. Next July, we'll be opening up 2 large warehouses, 2 zero waste hubs. One hopefully in Glen Innes and the other one in the North Shore of Auckland. They'll be about 1,500 square metres each. And that will be distributing the reusable goods from the Auckland and organic collection. So we're rapt about that as well. So folks, that's what we're doing at the moment, and we've got obviously more planned. But I guess when just briefly to talk about challenges, it takes money to make money. Accessing capital is still really tricky, trying to raise that impact finance. The other challenge we have is consultants running around telling councils that it's easier and better to have just one big contract for all your waste services and rather than lots of little contracts. And then also councils seem really keen to work with community-led organisations, but it's difficult for both parties and easy for everyone to get frustrated. But we're very hopeful. We see change happening societally. We're seeing buyers change. Auckland Council's been absolutely phenomenal in taking a lead on social procurement. We're seeing investors change how they want to invest their money. And so life's things are looking good. It's an exciting time in history. It's a point with a lot of stuff could go either way: carbon emissions, inequality, control of the waste stream. And it's easy with everything that's going on to be really focused on your own entity and your own community. But I think if you can be cooperatively focused, and as we all are, then I think that's great. And share stuff that you've invested in. Mahari Waste List has spent about $50,000 on its its health and safety system in the last year, and we've been making that available for people to take on at a much greater, lower rate. Finally, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. There's such great people came before us in this zero waste movement, which is, as Hannah and Liam said recently, it's a collective aspiration rather than an individual journey. And I'm so fortunate to be part of that. And I think there's a great shift in the passing of the baton. Sorry, daughter, I failed completely to reduce my time, but ngā mihi nui to all of you. Great to see you. Kia ora.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay. We have Sue Coots up next. And Sue is one of the Zero Waste Network team, very excitingly. So she is an advocate for zero waste strategies. I'll just remove your spotlight, Matthew. Here we go. She builds relationships with people working in government, councils, businesses, and like-minded organisations to share ideas and insights so we can make the jump to a world without waste. She is a member of the Waste Advisory Board and used to run Wastebusters. She travels between Wanaka and Wellington and is in Wanaka today, I think. Sue, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, daughter. Kia ora tātou, ko Sue ho. I'm just going to get I've got a presentation. Hopefully I'll be able to beat Matthew's time, but not that it's a contest. Just get that started and do a present. How did that look at your end?
Good.
All good? Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I'll just start to rattle through. And I guess I've been involved in all different parts of the zero waste story, so different layers. And I guess in the early days, we were working as operators and then trying to jump up to the top level, miss about 5 steps, try to say something quickly to the politicians, then would fall back down to the operational level again. And one of the things that's happened recently is that we've actually got some budget and some resource to apply to doing the work at the political level and at the national level to try to change the way things are. It's a work in progress, like everyone said. It's not something that's going to happen today. It's not something that's going to ever be finished tomorrow. It's something that we've got to keep working on over time to try to build the world that we want. And that's our job. I guess what I love about zero waste, thinking about Warren Snow as one of the first people I heard about it from, is that it's a philosophy, it's a toolbox, and it's a destination. And so it's all rolled into one. And, you can get started doing practical stuff on the ground today in your neighborhood. You can be working on things that make a real difference. And through that process, we get a lot of insight and understanding that we can take to the table to talk with business or government or whoever we need to influence to change the operating environment and to shift our world into a new place. Yeah, I'm with Matt. I really love the lever diagram, and the way that I see it is the further out on the lever you go, if you can change someone's mind and shift their brain, you get much more power in the lever. And what I'm really focused on at the moment is the political systems, the structures and the leadership. the people that are working in positions of power that have the chance to really change the big things on the dial for us. So a lot of that's about public support. If the people are there, then the politicians start to listen and the political will comes on board. And then you still have to get all the policy instruments in place to shape the operating environment. And getting everything to line up is a bit of a mission. You can have a lot of people making noise without really getting a lot of change. And at the moment, what we're seeing is a real turning point, or a point of where everything is shifting and people are looking forward 30 years. They're going, what kind of world do we want to build? And we're seeing people like the Infrastructure Commission, the Climate Commission, Ministry for the Environment, MB, all really starting to think hard about how to create a better platform or a framework that we can use to shift into a new place as a society. So we've got, my job really is to tell our story, the story of what we collectively achieve. And together we have a massive impact. Daughter and Izzy and Ali have gathered up figures from last year. And what we found was that the 62 members that we have operating in the full members, 32,000 tonne recovered last year. That's 12,000 people working in this sector and 77 million in turnover. And so when Matt talks about swagger, being able to go into a room and own the space and be able to say, yes, we make a difference, together we make a difference, these numbers really help. So as individuals working in our neighbourhoods, we really matter. But at the national level, we also really matter because we're big enough to make a real difference. And yeah, the thing that we're trying to get people to understand at the moment is that it's time for a change. We've been living in this unsustainable, disconnected linear system, and a lot of people saying, if we just do more recycling, we're going to get there, it's going to all work. If we just minimize our footprint a little bit, we're never going to get there using those minimizing strategies. We really have to have the big jump. We have to have the totally new way of thinking about things, and that's what people in our sector are really good at. You've heard some great examples so far in the first three people that have spoken about how we change the game, how we're looking at creating a sustainable, connected, circular economy, and then going well beyond that into a space where we're living in a land of abundance, where we're all networked and things are regenerative. And so we want to go well beyond zero waste, even though zero waste is our story. The other great, jump here, but the other great thing that we have is that we already know what to do. And we've been using zero waste strategies to bring the circular economy to life since way before it was fashionable. People have been doing it since 1989. And what I'm noticing a lot in government and in business is it's a very scary time for people who thought they knew how the world worked. The world is shifting under their feet and they're becoming afraid. They're standing on the edge of the world like the old explorers, looking out at the map, their map of the world is like, out there be dragons, they don't know what's happening out here. And just like the old explorers, they don't understand that there's people all living in these places that know what to do already. So we have a huge amount of IP, we have a huge amount of knowledge, and we have a huge amount of courage in our sector. We already know the answers. We have some great understandings, and really what we're looking at is trying to flip the system so that it works for us better. At the moment, I'm guessing that all of you would have heard about the waste hierarchy and the idea that really we want to, it's not enough to just stop throwing things in the landfill. We really have to get right up the top of the waste hierarchy and start redesigning and reusing if we want to shift the game. At the moment, most of the money and the energy goes into what I would call waste management, which is mainly landfill. Started a few mutterings about energy for waste, which is, should we burn it or bury it? Both pretty bad. Downcycling, which is a lot of what happens as well. And the problem that we have is that that big waste management approach really sucks the oxygen out of the system and the cash. So what we're looking to do is to flip that system, shift the energy and the investment and the focus up into the top, where there's already so many amazing projects and things happening. They just need the resources to be fed into them so that they can fly. And then what we're looking to get to is to have that flip. We want to be investing in all of the things that we do want rather than spending all our money on the rubbish that we don't want. We want to be looking at how we can have a much more proactive approach to life, the world, and what the world that we want to live in. I guess the thing that people often say to us is, or they've said it to me a few times, you're crazy, you want to do yourself out of a job. What are you going to do once all that stuff is gone? And like, well, that's not our game. Our long game as a business, our business model isn't to make as much money as we can from moving piles of stuff around. Our business model is to build resilience. It's to protect and restore our places. It's to connect up our communities, and it's to build strong local economies. And the jobs and the economic story of that will come. We have faith that there's going to be opportunities in that new world for us. And there's a lot of questions that we've been asking ourselves as we go along. Like Dora was saying at the beginning, one of the big questions on our radar is, how do we build a really great partnership between the Zero Waste Network and people in the Māori world who are working in the space as well? And traditionally, that's been done through, classic, boots in processes where you do practical work together and you get to know each other. So that happens on boards and groups and, different activities, but it's also happened a lot in our world through joint ventures. And so CBEC up in Northland has had they're the joint venture kings, always joint venturing with somebody, and they've had some great joint ventures with Te Rāroa and Heiui Kotahi Tātou Trust up in Warewa in the past, which have really brought wonderful benefits to both people. And those shared values that we have are the basis for the types of partnerships that we're trying to build in the future. Work in progress. We're trying to influence the way that product stewardship rolls out in the country. And we already have this massive supply chain, which is pumping out, some useful things, some crap. And we really have to build the recovery chain to take back those things. Recovery chain is not only about recycling, it's also about how do we get a way of harvesting reusables like Nadine was talking about. And so being able to get a product stewardship scheme or a series of product stewardship schemes that support a network of take-back depots across the country is the story that Matthew was talking about earlier. That gives our communities access to the services that they're looking for, but it also gives our people opportunities for enterprise opportunities. One of the things that happens at government level is there's often not a lot of insight into how things are connected, and people don't really understand, the thing that we do understand, which is that, when you have materials flowing through a system, you also have energy flowing through a system. We combine them to make the stuff and the services that we use. So at the moment, our economy is 8.5% circular, and we need to get it to about 17% to be able to stay within 1.5 degrees of warming. So we really, that's the Alan MacArthur story of designing waste and pollution out of the system, slowing down the flows of products and materials, and looking at how we can be much more regenerative in our work. So we want to get some pretty serious goals going on with zero waste and zero carbon. We've already got zero carbon locked in. It would be awesome if we could see zero waste locked in. The other thing that we're really thinking about is the infrastructure side of it. We want to get things set up so it's easy for people to do what's required. And that's really looking at how we can build a nationwide network of one-stop shops. It's so that we have a resource recovery centre in every neighbourhood or every small town, and product stewardship is one of the ways that we might be able to get the revenue flow to be able to do that. A big question for us is how we get the money in the right hands. And so this is thinking about that sort of the knowledge and resources part of the story. There's going to be a couple of years, there's going to be $250 million in the waste flowing into the Waste Minimisation Fund every year. We want to see that invested in innovation rather than maintaining the status quo. And we really want to see the money flowing out, and they're talking about, we should spend a bit on behaviour change, we should spend a bit on recycling, we should spend a bit on reuse. And what we really want to say is the people that you choose to give the money to are going to behave in totally different ways. How we implement zero waste is just as important as that it happens. And so we really want to see fair shares of that money. We'd love to see 50 million going into different enterprise opportunities for mana whenua, going into civil society, going into enterprise, small business, social enterprise, all the different forms of business we're seeing are purpose-driven nowadays, going to the councils to be able to enable them to get up the hierarchy, and going to see government really getting in behind the idea of how they're going to coordinate this story of making the shift. And the biggest thing that we, that I really love and I appreciate about what we do is that by doing this work, we're changing ourselves, we're changing each other, and we're changing our world, and that those things all flow in a circle. And learning by doing is such a valid and important way of moving into this unknown future. A lot of people don't have the courage to shift into the future with uncertainty. So, to tolerate the uncertainty that's inherent in doing something in a different way. And a lot of the work that we do is give people courage that it could work and that it could happen. And we do that in our neighborhoods, we do it in our families, we do it in our businesses, we do it in those relationships that Matt was talking about with councils, and we also do it with government. Ngā mihi kia koutou, that tēnā koutou katoa. Look forward to hearing what everyone has to say in the breakout sessions.
Thank you very much, Sue. Hey, I have been meaning to do a poll this whole time. So I'm going to quickly just launch a poll, which is really about how useful you found those images. So I'm going to do that now. Everyone just continue on while I also start to introduce our last but not least speaker. Need to find here we go. So very exciting to have Kahurangi Carter join us. She is the regional manager at Parakore, advocating and educating for a world without waste from a Māori worldview. Kahurangi wants to ensure that all New Zealanders are able to access Aotearoa's natural taonga and grow an appreciation of the natural world. She wants her children's children to swim in our rivers, collect kai from our moana, breathe the fresh air from the top of our maunga, and take pride in the mutual kaitiaki with Papatūānuku and Ranganui. And she is from Ngāti Maniapoto Te Iwi. Welcome, Kahurangi.
E aku raukura, no mai haere mai, kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia koe, daughter me ngā kai kōrero o te rā, ko karioe te maunga, ko whaingaroa te moana, ko Waikato Maniapoto te iwi. This is my whakapapa. Ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. I am the river, and the river is me. Well, how do I get onto the next slide? There we go. Understanding whakapapa inspires behaviour change and culture change. Whakapapa strengthens our connection with Rangi Nui, our Sky Father, and Papatūānuku, our Earth Mother. At Parakore, we educate and advocate for a world without waste from a Māori worldview. Parakore is about the return to circular economies where the concept of waste no longer exists. At the end of my kōrero, I hope that you think about whakapapa every day when you're cooking a meal for your whānau, when you're ordering a sports uniform for your local team, when you're voting in the next elections. There she is. There is Papatūānuku, our Earth Mother. Isn't she beautiful? So Papatūānuku has been here long before Homo sapiens arrived, and we whakapapa to her. Maybe in all that time that humans weren't here, she has some knowledge to impart to us, something she can teach us. When we look at the natural systems, we see circles everywhere. We see the change in the season. We see a wave crashing on the beach. We see the flower in our garden. In recent times, we live in a linear system of extract, take, make, and throw away. The whakapapa of this system is colonization, which best friend is capitalism. This model, this straight line, doesn't respect our whakapapa, Te Papa Tuanuku and Ranginui. When I was a child, my mother fed my siblings and I from our garden and our orchard, which my grandfather grew for us. My favorite thing was the mandarins. I would watch as the green fruit changed color as it got more and more orange. I knew that it was getting juicier and sweeter. Sometimes I would wait that extra day just to get that sweeter taste. And sometimes my brother beat me to get that sweet, juicy mandarin. Nowadays, I still love mandarins, and I buy my mandarins from the supermarket or sometimes from our local farmers market. Rarely, on the rare occasion, friends sometimes bring me mandarins from their tree. In the future, I would love to see our streets lined with fruit trees and food forests, and have children walking to school be able to see that fruit ripen in front of them and throw their peels underneath the tree to then nourish and give nutrients back to that tree. A perfect circular economy. Without being really conscious of it, my siblings and I knew the whakapapa of our food. How do we talk about whakapapa to create culture change? I'm going to tell you a story now about Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku. Hopefully you've all heard it before. So in the beginning was a time of nothingness, te kore, and then was the time of darkness, te poa. Within this time of darkness and nothingness was Papa Tuanuku and Ranginui locked in a loving embrace. And between them, they had many children. Now their children were in this dark space and they were just cramped up and they really wanted to get out. So some say that Tane lay on his back and he used the power of his legs to push his parents apart. And then came Te Ao Marama, the time of light, which is where we live now. Now, all of the brothers, the atua, the gods, went to different places and that became their domain. So Tane Mahuta became the god of the forests, of the trees, of the birds, of the insects. Tangaroa, the god of the sea. Tawhiri Matia, the god of the winds. Now, Tane, he loved to test his procreating prowess. Yes, he loved to have babies. So we talk about the birds and the insects, but he also wanted a wife. So he went to Kurawaka, where he fashioned Hine Ahu One from the red soil. Now, Hine Ahu One is our first wahine, and it is said by some that we are all descendants of Tane Mahuta and Hine Ahu One. Therefore, our whakapapa, our genealogy, through our genealogy and our whakapapa, we are related to every living and non-living thing. So how do we talk about whakapapa to create culture change? Well, let's take the simple glass bottle here. What is the whakapapa of this bottle? Well, we know, I don't have to tell you, that the whakapapa of that bottle comes from the white sands of Hine Kirikiri. Her domain is the tidal domain between the land and the ocean. She has gifted us this beautiful taonga, which we have then made into a glass bottle. The whakapapa of the glass bottle is the white silica sand. But there's more to the story of this glass bottle. This glass bottle has also had that sand taken from Hine Kirikiri and heated up in roaring fires to be made into bottles, taken on trucks and distribution centers that ends up in our shops. And then we take it home. And this is a really long way away from this gift that Hine Kirikiri has given us of beautiful white sand. Now, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I heard this amazing song. Jill Scott Heron, he is a civil rights activist, he was, sorry, and he had this song called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." What that meant to me when I was a teenager was I was like, yeah, revolution, not really understanding what that meant. What it means to me now is that the revolution will start in our minds. So how do we start that shift in our minds to create behavior change? Through whakapapa. What would change if you thought about the whakapapa of your stuff? What is the whakapapa of the system we live in? What is the whakapapa of the land that you live on? What is the whakapapa of the beliefs that you have? So I could talk about whakapapa all day long. I'm so passionate about it and how it can create behavior change, especially when it comes to our taiao and being good kaitiaki for Ranginui and Papatūānuku. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kahurangi Carter, and you'll find my email address there as well. You can also reach out to Parakore through our website there to continue this conversation about whakapapa and behaviour change. And I hope that you are now inspired to go into your lives and think about whakapapa every day, to share your new knowledge about whakapapa in your everyday life, from when you're at home with your whānau, when you're at work, and in the greater world. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora Kahurangi. That was awesome. I feel really grateful for everybody. I feel like the theory of change has pretty much already done its job, and that we have had 5 really amazing examples that are all so important and illustrate the really important work that's happening. We have gone way over time, so I feel like we're going to have to rejig the workshop session and make it quite short and sweet. What I will do is send everybody to breakout rooms for maybe 15 minutes, and we won't get to have such a long report back, but that's okay. What I think we'll do is take on everybody's feedback, use the Trello as much as possible today, but use it into the future. So if tomorrow you decide you've had a good thought, please chuck it onto the Trello, and we will maybe do a networking call where we can report back kind of separately or something like that. So thank you all so much to our speakers. I'm going to quickly share the results of that poll, which showed that the lever diagram was a winner. Not that it's about winners and losers. I'm going to hopefully just kind of randomly assign people to rooms. We had initially wanted to let people choose the rooms that they most felt attracted to, but with the numbers of people, we don't think we can do that. So I'm going to just start doing that now, and hopefully you will start moving soon. So just bear with me for a second. Broadcast message to all unassigned.
Hey, daughter, if you just open a couple of breakout rooms, you can just press
assign automatically and everyone will just chuck into a room.
Oops. Yes, I have set up the rooms. Do you want to help me unassigned? Feel like our people have gone, but not the, oh no, Sue, you're still here. Move to. Okay, breakout room's not my forte. I'm starting again. More. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts while we're all just sitting here hanging out? George, if I make you co-host, will you do it for me? She's disappeared.
Daughter, the breakout rooms asked us to leave.
I know, because not everybody's going there.
Cool.
So, breakout rooms. Maybe we just give up on it. Yeah. Breakout rooms.
Daughter, why don't we just have a general conversation?
Yeah, let's just do that. Shall we look at the Trello, and I have those 4 questions for people. So I'll just chuck those into the chat.
I can take the notes.
Great. Okay, so the 4 questions that we have is, does the description of the intervention points make sense to you? I just have to make it not directly to Ali. Everyone in the meeting. So here are the questions. What was missing from the intervention points?
Daughter, I've been returned to the main room.
Yes, we are just going to stick with a main room conversation. The breakout rooms aren't happening.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah. And I think there'll be more people returning. So we're just going to have a conversation with these questions. So does the description of the intervention points make sense to you? Is there anything missing? When we were looking and doing research on the intervention points, like I referred to earlier, there is actually some literature on this, and they have many different intervention points. But we actually decided that these were the 5 that made the most sense, and there was quite a lot of discussion about whether actions and infrastructure should be split up, and we've ended up going with that they are. But there might be something that you think is totally obviously missing, and we'd love to know that. So I think in the Trello box, there is actually, in the Trello board, there is a list down the very end which talks about kind of general comments, and that would be a place to make that. Yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on anything that's obviously missing? You could chuck it into the chat. And the big question for me with my zero waste hat on is, what should be our priorities? So in the table, we've listed a few, but I would love everybody's thoughts on that.
Can I contribute, daughter?
Please.
And my personal feeling is that what is missing here is that it's a really great description of the community work particularly that is being done, and credit to the people who are working in that community space. But I think what is missing is that it doesn't really reference, there's a very slight reference, but it doesn't really reference the more commercial things. And I saw in the comments earlier someone saying, how do we do it instead of waste management or something like that? And I think that is actually what is missing, is that I think this has to all happen with a commercial lens and working in partnership with the commercial sector as well. I've come from the community, I'm now working in the business. I believe that it's possible, and I think that it's something that the community side of things will benefit from greatly if there is more sort of embracing of that
Yeah.
commercial side.
And do you think that needs to be kind of pulled out at each intervention point?
I think that's probably going a bit deeper than my
Yeah.
thoughts. and I'm no expert in many of those areas, but I just, having worked on both sides, community and commercial, I think it's an easy trap to fall into, to think that they are different things, and actually I don't think that they are.
Yeah, that's super valuable. Yeah. So another question was, so I mean, that's actually quite a good suggestion for something that Zero Waste Network needs to do, and that's kind of really put that lens on the theory of change. But what else makes sense for action at a network level? I mean, I think we have kind of noted different kind of places where things happen, but it would be really, really great in order to be able to kind of build the theory of change into kind of our annual strategies and things like that, if we had some really clear ideas of what's going to make the most use, what's going to be the most useful things for the Zero Waste Network to do. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Can I say something,
Please.
daughter? There's lots of organisations that have done work on trying to create frameworks and theory of change, often using logic models and so on. How much do you want that work to feed into what you're doing at the moment?
Great question. So I just recently finished my master's, and my thesis topic was looking at shared impact for the Zero Waste Network. And the kind of idea of a theory of change using a logic model was a big part of that, really understanding, for people who don't know what that is, it's kind of thinking about change as a series of kind of things leading from one to another. So you put stuff in, that's your kind of inputs, you start getting outputs, which is often what we report on, and then there's these outcomes, which are slightly bigger, and then we get to these kind of much longer term kind of impacts. And I do think that we've used the language of a theory of change, and it's not quite the same as a logic model. So it's really great that you've picked up on that, Karen. I think that it would be kind of, in my thinking about it, I think that's a next step. I think it would be relatively simple to start to apply it to a logic model. What I think is often the issue is really making sure that that makes sense at an organizational or a member level, and then there's a slightly different version for the network generally, like the outputs and the outcomes are slightly different, and hopefully the impacts are all the same. So I do think it's probably a next step. Hope that answered the question. Hannah and Liam, do you guys want to say your point out loud?
Sure. It's definitely something that we think about a lot with the Zero Waste Network, because through the rubbish trip, we're really connected with a lot of businesses that help people to realize their personal zero waste goals. Like, it's really hard to reduce your waste if there aren't businesses that offer options. So there's definitely that business thing. But I wonder if, rather than necessarily using the language of commercial, there's a role in a way of thinking about it in terms of local economies. And Zero Waste Network is already doing these awesome closing the loop events where you go around to different parts of the country and bring together businesses, as well as, you know, there's case studies that are not just community, but there's business and individuals and so on. And it creates this picture of an ecosystem, and it's sort of showing, hey, look, this stuff is already happening on the ground already. And I just wonder if there is some way to build on that closing the loop work, like that's leading somewhere, and maybe it hasn't, maybe we're not sure yet what the next step is, but there's certainly probably a whole lot of learnings that you guys have done from those events, and maybe there's something that could be built upon there. So it's not, I don't have an idea, it's just the brainstorm or identifying work that you're already doing that has that business community interface and how that could be built on.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. Like, I know that we've only just kind of worked out that the sessions that we've been doing around the place have been really, really valuable. Such interesting stories across the kind of whole range of activity in the resource recovery space. And we just worked out that we could make videos of them and share them, and then it would have a wider audience. So there's definitely a whole lot of learning as we go going on. But it was really interesting to see that when we had to cancel our Dunedin event because of COVID, we took it online for the first time and had a super positive response, which makes me really kind of optimistic that there is a huge appetite for hearing about these kind of businesses doing the right thing stories. Nada. Fee, I'm wondering if you want to talk about your connection to the council at all, and any thoughts on that?
My council in particular, I'm really struggling with.
Right.
So I'm really needing support actually to get them to even take us seriously as community groups. It's very frustrating. They won't let us put in an expression of interest to work with them on the commercial composting and scaling up composting. So like, I feel like I'm fighting them at the moment, really.
Yeah.
Dunedin, sorry.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that there's probably lots of experience within the network of something similar. There's also lots of really great councils out there, and I think there's definitely potential for supporting. I mean, I'm thinking of you, Liam, and the work that you're doing on a piece of research for us on, what have we called it, localism. And yeah, do you want to speak to that at all, Liam?
Oh, I was just going to say, Fee, you should come along to the organic session tomorrow, because one of the breakout rooms, we're going to talk about that interface between what local government can do to support organics enterprises specifically. So, and hopefully we'll have some people from local government there as well. But looking into doing some research on how we understand the impact and the benefits of sort of localized and community scale enterprise and stuff like that. I mean, there's been so much work done on that, but I think it's finding really good ways to communicate it to people in local government and central government, and people who might have a more sort of conventional perspective on business and commercial activity and whatever, or you know, who have those pressures that's I think Matthew mentioned earlier around, oh, they just want one big contract, you know, makes it easy, we don't have to deal with all these smaller groups and stuff like that. And so yeah, how to communicate the potential benefits of working with smaller scale initiatives and enterprises and stuff in a way that makes sense to people is something I'm looking into. But I mean, there's so much to explore there, and if anyone is really interested in that area, I'd love to hear from you too, you know, to feed into that research I'm doing. Yeah, there's been a lot of work done in that space in particular. I mean, Zero Waste Network has kind of been talking about a lot of these things for years and years and years, but some really great groups like the Centre for Local Economic something or other, CLES in the UK, have a really interesting framework for thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of corridor around that stuff, and of course different ways, different context here in Aotearoa in terms of thinking about how those relationships work between local government, community, mana whenua. I mean, there's so much there.
Yeah. Okay, look, you guys, it's been a bit of a failure in terms of the workshop, but I think it's been overall a success. So I think we can call it a day and accept that there is another session starting at 1. And today's session is on e-waste, I think. So that's going to be a panel discussion. We've got 2 more days. So we've got today, Wednesday and Thursday, a Zero Waste Network events, and then Friday is a combined session, and EHAR and the Community Energy Network are also running sessions at the moment. So if you're interested in knowing what they are, then head to the communityenterprise.org.nz website. And it would be really great to just close with a karakia, seeing as we started with a karakia, and I will just chuck it into the chat again.
I don't even know how to turn off my video. Video.
Okay, so we'll do Unu here, Zero Waste Network crew. You can say it with me. Here it is, copy into the chat. Everybody in the meeting. All right. Ko unuhia te karakia, tākana te karakia. Unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia ki urutapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te niko, te tinana. Koia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki ronga, tūturu whakamaua, kia tina, tina, hui e, homi e, taiki. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our speakers, and hopefully see you at some of the other sessions. Thanks, guys.